An old woman shows up outside our house every night at 4:31 a.m. She's getting closer each time, and I don't know what to do. My name is Jake, and I am a 19-year-old college student living with my parents in a quiet little town near Portland, Oregon. We have a cozy 2-story house on a peaceful street, surrounded by tall pine trees. Normally, it's serene, but this past week has been anything but. My mom, Emily, teaches high school English. She's the practical one in our family, always keeping us grounded. My dad, John, is a former Marine who now works as a construction foreman. He may seem tough on the outside, but he's a softie when it comes to my mom and me. This all began last Tuesday night. I was up late, cramming for a biology exam, my eyes burning from staring at my textbook for hours. When I checked my phone, it was already 4:30 a.m. Damn, I muttered, realizing I'd have to be up for class in just a few hours. That's when I heard the doorbell ring. Who on earth would be ringing our doorbell at this hour? I crept downstairs, my heart pounding. Our Chihuahua, Max, was already at the door, growling softly. I peered through the peephole and felt a chill run down my spine. There, under the porch light, stood an old woman. She was thin, almost skeletal, with wispy white hair floating around her head like a halo. Her skin was pale and wrinkled, hanging loosely on her face. But what really got to me were her eyes, completely black, like two empty voids staring right at me. "Jake, what's going on?" My mom's voice startled me awake. She was already halfway down the stairs, looking worried and trying to shake off her drowsiness. "There's an old woman outside," I stuttered, still trying to process what I was seeing. Mom squinted through the peephole, her face turning pale as she caught sight of the figure. Moments later, Dad rushed in, looking alert despite having been woken up so suddenly. Should we open the door?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mom quickly shook her head. "No way. We don't know who she is or why she's here at this hour." She turned and grabbed a notebook from the kitchen counter. "We need to document everything," she said, already jotting down details. Dad, meanwhile, took charge of securing the house, double-checking every lock and window. "I'm calling the police," he said, his voice firm and filled with concern. While Mom called 911, I kept an eye on the old woman through the peephole. She stood perfectly still like a statue, with her arms hanging loosely by her sides. Her black eyes seemed to follow my every movement, even though she couldn't possibly see me. About 15 minutes later, the police arrived. As soon as their car pulled up, the old woman turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows at the end of our street. The officers listened to our account, but there wasn't much they could do. No crime had been committed, and the woman was gone. They assured us they'd keep an eye on the neighborhood and left. We all went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Those black, empty eyes haunting me. The following night, I went to bed early, hoping to avoid another encounter. But right at 4:31 a.m., I woke to Max's frantic barking. My heart sank. There she was again, a few steps closer to our door this time. We called the police again, but by the time they arrived, she had vanished. This same pattern repeated for the next 5 nights. Each time she appeared at exactly 4:31 a.m., inching closer to our house with each visit. The nightly visits took a toll on all of us. Mom threw herself into research, spending countless hours online searching for similar cases, or any possible explanation. "There has to be a logical reason for this," she muttered, surrounded by printouts and notes. Dad focused on tightening our home security, installing new locks, motion sensor lights, and even considering a security system. Late at night, I could hear them arguing quietly. Mom thought going public might bring answers. "Someone out there knows something," she insisted. But Dad was against it. "You want us to be the crazy family on the news?" he retorted. The tension between them was almost as frightening as the nightly visitor. Last night was the worst yet. She stood right at the bottom of our porch steps, looking up at my bedroom window. Even in the darkness, I could see a faint, unsettling smile on her lips. I don't know what to do anymore. The police have stopped responding to our calls, thinking it's all a prank. My parents are at their breaking point, caught between their fear and their need to protect me. Part of me hopes this is just some bizarre, prolonged dream, and that I'll wake up to find everything normal again. But deep down, I know that's not true. If anyone out there has experienced something like this, please, please reach out. We can't take much more of this nightly terror. I'll post updates if anything changes. For now, I'm just praying she doesn't get any closer tonight. Thank you to everyone who replied to my previous post. I wish I had better news, but things have taken a turn for the worse. Much worse. It has been 3 more nights since my last update, and each one has been more terrifying than the one before. The old woman keeps getting closer, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. My parents are not handling it any better. On the 8th night, she was halfway up our porch steps. I remember pressing my face against the cold glass of my bedroom window, my breath fogging up the pain as I stared down at her. She stood there, still as a statue, those black eyes locked on our front door. Last night was a real nightmare. She was standing right at the foot of our porch steps, looking up at my bedroom window. I swear, even though it was dark and she was far away, I could see a faint, eerie smile on her face. I am at a loss. The police have stopped coming when we call. They think it is some sort of prank. My parents are stressed beyond belief, torn between their fear and their need to keep me safe. Part of me wishes this was just a strange, long dream, that I would wake up and everything would be back to normal. But deep down, I know that is not the case. If anyone out there has ever dealt with something like this, please, please reach out. We do not know how much longer we can handle this nightly visitor. Dad, thinking he could drive her away, switched on the porch light and yelled, "We see you! Get out of here or we'll call the police!" His voice trembled slightly, revealing the fear beneath his tough exterior. Instantly, the old woman's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine through the window. A cold chill ran down my spine as a sinister grin spread across her face, revealing rows of yellowed, jagged teeth. "Oh no," I whispered, stumbling back from the window. When I dared to look again, she was gone. But the porch light was off, even though Dad insisted he hadn't touched the switch. The following night, she reached the top of our porch steps. This time, it was Mom who lost it. "Enough is enough!" she screamed, storming down the stairs. "I'm going to handle this!" Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by frantic determination. "Emily, don't!" Dad shouted, but she was already throwing the door open. The old woman stood there, inches from Mom's face. They locked eyes for a moment before Mom let out a scream and slammed the door shut. She collapsed against it, sobbing. "Her eyes," she kept repeating. "Those horrible eyes." Dad held her tightly, his own face etched with fear. Seeing my mother so terrified shook me to the core. We spent the rest of the night huddled together in the living room, jumping at every noise the house made. When morning came, we discovered deep scratch marks on our front door. Last night was the worst yet. At exactly 4:31 a.m., as usual, Max started barking. But this time it was different, VDJ high-pitched and full of terror. I rushed downstairs to find him cowering in the corner, trembling. And there, pressed against the front window, was the old woman's face. Up close, her skin looked even more decayed, hanging in rotting strips from her bones. Her mouth was open in a silent scream, showing a black void where her tongue should have been. But her eyes, they were endless black pits, and as I stared into them, I felt myself slipping into darkness. I do not know how long I stood there, paralyzed. It could have been seconds or hours. I only snapped out of it when I heard Dad's voice. "Jake! Jake! Snap out of it!" He shook me, his face pale with worry. I blinked, returning to reality. The old woman was gone, but the foul stench of decay lingered. We're at our breaking point. My parents are barely coping. Mom has stopped trying to rationalize it and started placing salt lines at all the doors and windows. Dad is talking about calling his old Marine buddies, convinced we are under attack. I have been researching non-stop, trying to find any similar cases or local folklore. So far, I've found nothing. The only lead is an old newspaper article from the 1950s about a widow carver who lived in a cabin near our neighborhood. Accused of witchcraft, she was driven out of town. The article said she vowed revenge on the townspeople and their descendants before vanishing into the woods. It sounds far-fetched, but at this point, I'll consider anything. I dread what tonight will bring. The old woman reached our window last night. The next step is inside our house. I'll update again tomorrow if I can. If you do not hear from me, well, I don't want to think about that. Wish us luck. We're going to need it. I am writing this with shaking hands, trying to process what happened last night. I do not know if I am losing my mind or if something truly evil is haunting us. Either way, I am terrified. Last evening, we tried to brace ourselves for her visit. We double-checked the locks, closed all the curtains, and barricaded the doors. Dad armed himself with a baseball bat, and Mom held a can of pepper spray. We were determined to face whatever came at 4:31 a.m. As the time approached, we huddled in the living room. Max was unusually quiet, curled up tightly under the coffee table. The air felt thick, like before a storm. 4:30 a.m., 1 minute to go. "Maybe she won't come," Mom whispered, gripping the pepper spray. Her usual composure was gone, replaced by raw fear. 4:31 a.m. At first, nothing happened. We held our breath, straining to hear any sound. Then a soft scraping noise came from the front door. Dad tightened his grip on the bat. "I'm gonna check," he said, moving towards the door, his hands trembling. "No!" Mom and I whispered urgently, but he was already at the peephole. He looked through, then stumbled back, his face ashen. She's gone," he said. Relief washed over us, but it was short-lived. At that moment, Max let out a pitiful whine. We turned to see him staring, trembling at something behind us. Slowly, dreading what I would see, I turned around. There she was, inside our house. The old woman appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, her gaunt silhouette framed against the darkness. Her eyes, black as coal, seemed to draw in all the light in the room. Mom let out a piercing scream. Dad swung his bat, but it went right through her as if she were made of mist. I saw my parents in a way I had never seen them before. Mom, usually so composed, was trembling uncontrollably, tears streaming down her face, but her voice remained steady as she chanted what sounded like a protection spell. Dad, always the rock, looked completely lost. Yet when the old woman stepped forward, he stood his ground, positioning himself between us and her, ready to protect us. I was frozen, unable to move or breathe. Her eyes had me in their grip. She moved closer, her mouth opening impossibly wide, revealing a horrifying black void. Just as she reached out a bony hand towards me, Max, our chihuahua, darted from under the table and lunged at the old woman, barking fiercely. The moment he touched her, there was a blinding flash of light and a deafening boom. When the light faded, both Max and the old woman were gone. We spent the rest of the night searching the house, calling for Max, but there was no trace of him or the old woman. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. When morning came, we were exhausted and bewildered. Had it all been a shared delusion? But the deep scratch marks on the door and Max's absence told us otherwise. Mom's rationality finally crumbled. She spent hours calling animal shelters and putting up missing dog posters, her voice breaking each time she described Max. Dad, who had always dismissed Max's barking as annoying, now wandered the house at night, whistling for him and leaving treats in every room. I tried to sleep, but nightmares plagued me. In my dreams, I wandered through a dark, foggy forest. I could hear Max barking in the distance, but every time I moved toward the sound, it grew fainter. And always, just at the edge of my vision, I saw the old woman, watching, waiting. I woke up gasping, my face damp with sweat. That's when I noticed at VJJ a faint, unintelligible whispering filling the room, and then a cold, gentle touch on my cheek, like ghostly fingers. Panicked, I bolted downstairs. The living room looked like a scene from a horror film. Every flower in the vases meant to brighten the mood was rotting. Not just wilted, but decaying, filling the room with a nauseating stench. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, looking as shocked as I felt. "Did you hear it too?" I began, but they just nodded. The tension between them had dissolved, replaced by a mutual fear. We were at a loss. The old woman hadn't appeared at 4:31 a.m. like usual, but that somehow felt worse. It was as if she were everywhere now, invisible but present, lurking. Max was still missing. The police were no help VDJ, they believed he had simply run away. They dismissed our story about the old woman. I was starting to doubt myself too, but the rotting flowers and the whispers were undeniable proof. I found something chilling. The newspaper article about Widow Carver mentioned her full name, Eliza Carver. I also found her death certificate. She died on May 17, 1954, at 4:31 a.m. Today is May 17th. I showed the certificate to my parents. Mom went pale, and Dad clenched his jaw so tightly I could hear his teeth grinding. "This cannot be a coincidence," Mom whispered, her voice shaking. She had given up on rational explanations. What if she's come back for revenge? Dad shook his head, but doubt clouded his eyes. "That's impossible," he muttered, without conviction. As night fell, the atmosphere grew stifling. We tried to maintain normalcy, but every noise sent us into a panic. Mom obsessively checked the salt lines she had placed around the house, muttering prayers. Dad paced, his old service pistol now at his side. I don't know what tonight will bring. Part of me wants to flee, to get as far away as possible. But another part knows it won't matter. Whatever this is, it's attached to us. It's 11:45 p.m. as I write this, less than 5 hours until 4:31 a.m. Mom and Dad are in the living room, holding hands and speaking in low voices. Their love is evident, strengthened by this ordeal. Whatever happens, we will face it together. If you're reading this, please be cautious about what you invite into your life. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. I'll update if I can, but if you don't hear from me, well, at least you'll know why. Update, 3:17 a.m. Something is terribly wrong. The house is unnaturally silent. No hum from the fridge, no ticking clock just silence. I tried to go downstairs, but my bedroom door won't budge. It's not locked. The handle turns, but it's like a wall is blocking it. The air feels thick and cold. It's hard to breathe. Whispers are filling the room, coming from everywhere and nowhere. I can't understand the words, but they sound angry. There's something moving in the shadows. I can't see it clearly, but I know it's there. Watching. Waiting. Goodbye, no sleep.